Namaskar and welcome to episode 114 of Daily Global Insights. I'm your host Sree Iyer and joining me is Sridhar Chityalaji. Today is the March 9th, 2021. Sridharji, I'm going to quickly read all the main points and then we can go into the details. Namaskaram and welcome to you, sir.
Namaskaram and good morning to everybody on this, little bit of a cloudy day, but there's bright prospects in store for all the American citizens as the House sits down to pass the COVID-19 Relief Bill 3, and everybody will be getting a $1,400 check by end of the month.
And the main points for today's news items. Arizona border chief warns illegal immigration on track to surpass the total of past 3 years combined. There's a surge. In fact, there have been videos circulating of border being open and 1,500 people walking across. There is a fair amount of churn going on in Arizona and Texas. A quarter of the migrants dumped in Texas border have COVID-19. 12 states sue Biden administration over climate executive order signed on January 27th. Major oil shipping port in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Ras Tamura, was attacked by an unmanned drone. However, the damage has been minimal. And new verbiage, old line items. What is in the 1.9 trillion stimulus package? Sridharji and I will be breaking it down for you. And now the main points. Trump's last petition was rejected by the Supreme Court of the United States without giving any reason. Why did they not even bother to give any reason, sir?
I think basically this has been the consistent position that has been taken by the Supreme Court. The elections are over. It's not something that can be overturned. It's null and void, and let's move on.
And in immigration issues, Arizona border chief warns illegal immigration on track to surpass the past 3 years combined. So this is one of those things where the Democrats are sort of they started this out and now suddenly there seems to be some sort of a deer caught in the headlights syndrome. What are your thoughts, sir?
My thoughts are it's like two parallel lines that are never going to meet. So we have on-ground issues and realities, which is being faced in Texas, Arizona, probably parts of California, and other areas around South. And then you have, they are confronting it on ground. The Texas and Arizona border states are facing the brunt of the problems, ranging from security issues to health issues on the COVID front, plus some very unpleasant circumstances in the Rio Grande area, where people have been drowned, women, children, etc. So what you're witnessing on ground this massive kind of a surge and problems dealing with it. Then you have the Biden administration, which says, look, we got to reunite all the people and we got to kind of, move this thing along. Maybe we should add additional tents to house the children. The children should be given a priority, etc. So therefore, and Biden administration is facing criticism within its own party from the progressive, which is to say all this, what you call, some people call it as child retention centers, the other call it as the child shelters. There's been criticism around how these children are being treated or looked after or being attended to. So we have a mounting crisis in the border, which somehow the White House administration has refused. Even more notable, Department of Homeland Security was basically briefed to say, okay, be careful in terms of how you advocate these issues and you don't want too much of PR. On the contrary, between Sunday and Monday, Department of Homeland Security here has issued a notification, which is to say we need volunteers because we have a major problem mounting in the border.
Well, Representative Crenshaw had visited the Texas border and he calls the situation unstable. Now, this whole initiative was put forth by progressives in the Democratic Party. Perhaps these people should also be first signing up for doing the voluntary service. And then basically what I'm saying is put your mouth where your money is or put your money where your mouth is. The White House is now calling on Texas governor to accept federal funds for COVID testing of illegal immigrants. Have we gone crazy here or what? Quarter of these illegal immigrants have COVID-19 positive, and Texas now has even taken away the face mask. So what exactly is going on? I am really concerned, sir.
I think just not yourself. I think the entire southern states are concerned. It's now what you call as from detain and retain. Detain and what you call
Deport.
detain and deport to detain and retain policy. And this detain and retain policy is now giving way to detain, retain, and release policy. So detain, retain, and release implies that people don't have the capacity to test all these people. They're getting released. And then suddenly people are realizing that there's a significant number of them with COVID-19 issues because they've all been, hunkered down in tents and bunkers on the other side of the border. And the message that is coming out is, look, you're not welcome, but if you make it, we will not throw you out. So therefore, you will stay if you can make it. So everybody is saying, we're going to make our way and attempt ourselves to see whether we can cross the border. That is why you have these drownings and deaths and other things that people are noticing in the Arizona border, Arizona and even in the Texas border. So the story here is that there is a wrong message that is going out, and many of these people are having Biden T-shirts, which is to say, you are welcome, with the Biden T-shirt banner, you are welcome. So I think the message is not clear or the message is not strong, and the policy enforcement has been taken out, and now the policy enforcement is around retain.
12 states have sued the Biden administration over the climate executive order signed on January 27, citing that it will impact agricultural and manufacturing jobs. In the Keystone Pipeline cancellation, Joe Biden's pause on any new leases for oil and gas development on federal land and offshore has hurt many people, many states. And in the administration, the Biden administration officials, some of them, had roles in probes and surveillance of the Trump campaign. This is something that is breaking out new. Senator Ted Cruz has put a hold on Biden's CIA pick, Burns, to pressure the administration over the Nord Stream 2. Sir, can you expand on this a little bit?
Well, I think that there is this there's sanctions. You have sanctions on Iran. There were sanctions imposed on Russia during that Crimea issue, if you recall. There's a bunch of sanctions when they had the occupation and they had that unwarranted war with Ukraine, and a bunch of sanctions were issued. So one of the sanctions that was done was this Nord Stream pipeline, which is a gas pipe that goes into Europe via Germany. It is conceivable that Angela Merkel seems to have done some negotiations and some kind of softening of the stand by Russia to accommodate this, to meet the energy needs of the European Union. But however, European Union is one of the signatories to this ban. So it seems like that whether the Democrats would impose that specific ban is the question, and what kind of monitoring is going to be done to accommodate that is something that has been raised, and there's no answers from the incoming CIA chief who has been nominated, not confirmed as yet, this is William Burns, who was the Deputy Secretary of State in the previous Obama-Biden administration.
And in other confirmations, Senator Marco Rubio of Florida has placed some objections on Wendy Sherman's nomination. Wendy Sherman is supposed to be the Deputy Secretary of State for her role in Iran negotiations and abortion rights movement. Likewise, the Attorney General, Merrick Garland's nomination, Tom Cotton and others have asked questions of him on gun control, immigration, and death penalty. So at least 3 of the nominees are going through some headwinds right now.
Well, I think most of the nominations, except the initial, like Lloyd Austin, there was some controversy around whether somebody should be called from retirement, but he went through. Barring Janet Yellen and I would say Janet Yellen, Lloyd Austin, and a couple of other people, most of the nominations are going through are going through a lot of questioning and delays around. For example, Linda Thomas Green, the United Nations ambassador, also went through the issue, and Gina from who is the Commerce Secretary went through, and from Connecticut. So, but what's happened is the key positions, which is namely the CIA, the Department of Justice. Without Department of Justice, there's no enforcement. It is struck. This Merrick Garland thing is struck. Now, what we are finding is that this is where this Wendy Sherman nomination is getting delayed. Is a lot of people who are in the State Department, or the junior officials, are all people who were part of the disastrous Iran deal that was struck. So the questions are being raised whether it is the same team that is coming together, and what is going to be the change in kind of policy as far as Iran is concerned. Is it going to be a softening of the stand, or is it going to be a tougher stand to make sure that Iran is compliant? Based on what they are doing with the West Asia Abrahamic policies, as well as the stand that has been taken by Biden on Israel with regard to Iran, is not auguring well, which is why there's a number of questions that is being raised in these hearings. We'll cover national security tomorrow in terms of the policy. We'll also cover some of the foreign policy issues tomorrow, and you will see similar issues prop up.
In foreign policy, Iran renegotiation attempts with no compliance on nuclear safeguards, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia policy, and the shunning of Mohammed bin Salman, that could be a danger to the Abrahamic Accords. And Israel has stated its own policy on Iran, and the embassy has issues that seems to be plaguing the relationship with Israel also. So Middle East right now, the Biden administration, I don't know why there seems to have been a mess created out of nothing, and we have to wait and see what plays out. All this to appease one country, Iran. That's what it looks to me, sir. You can tell me if I'm thinking wrong.
Well, clearly, Iran seems to have had a profound influence in the policy reshape that is taking place in the Biden administration. They're going to spell out both the Kingdom of KSA issue today, I think, and they're also going to talk about both the national security and the expansion of the foreign policy issues. So we'll cover more in detail. But to your point, it's very clear that the anti-Abrahamic stand, which is the policy signed by President Clinton, the Israel position around where is the embassy going to stay in Jerusalem, or is the embassy going to be relocated? And what is going to be the position on Iran in terms of, are you going to make them compliant, or are you going to give them concessions, or the prime questions? And you can see, even in Houthi, first they reversed the policy, then the Houthi attack occurred, and the Houthi attack occurred not just on U.S. campus, which is where the U.S. forces are and where a high commission is. But the Houthi attack also, Houthi rebels in concert with some of the other Iranian rebels, occurred not only in the Syrian side, which we covered, but also has occurred in Saudi Arabia. They had 14 drones and 8 missiles launched, of which only one drone reached, which was shot down. Unfortunately, there was no damage to any of those petroleum farms. Only one farm seems to have been within the target of the drone, and that's been put down. So you can see now there's a whole raft of issues that are propping up. As you rightly point out, everything seems to be the epicenter being Iran.
I'm going to quickly run through India-related news, and then we will go to the main topic of today, which is the stimulus. In India, fiscal steps taken by the government has led to positive growth in Q3 to Q3, and there is a slight uptick in growth of 0.4%. Road asset monetization of the Modi government in the 5th toll operate transfer bundle, comprising of about 160 kilometers, the government has realized about 3,362 crores. Adani Green Energy subsidiary commissions 100 megawatt wind power plant in Kutch 5 months ahead of time. ArcelorMittal, which announced an Orissa plant, is to invest more than 50,000 crores in Gujarat, and Pentagon is uncertain of Afghanistan withdrawal as the deadline looms. We talked about this yesterday, so we will be touching on, so you can go back and refer to that. Also, on the topic of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Mohammed bin Sultan, I had sat down and did an interview with Abhijit Iyer Mitra on the evolution of this Kingdom of Saudi Arabia over the past few years, what led up to MBS to ascend the throne, sort of. He runs the things right now. And what are the steps that Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is taking to bring the country towards modernity. So it's a very interesting conversation that will be airing in a day or two. Please do watch that. Now to the most important topic of today, which is the emerging data on what comprises the new stimulus 1.9 trillion. And to start off the ball rolling, I would like to bring your attention to the data that we presented to you. Prior to this 1.9 trillion, there was about 3.415, 3.42 trillion worth of stimuli, 4 different tranches. We're going to give you that to start our discussion. Here we go. I beg your pardon, that's not the right one. This is the right one. So here is what we've had thus far, which is you have the first 4 sets were named Families First, CARES, PPP, HCE, Response and Relief, and that totals to 3.415 trillion. There is an error of about 5 billion here or there. Sometimes you'll see the number as 3.42. So this is just, I'm setting the context in terms of what has been happening and what are the broad categories under which this money has been allocated for various segments such as small business support, unemployment benefits, recovery rebates, healthcare spending, state and local aid, tax relief, and other spending. Now, if we take, sir, display, if you will just let me, I'm going to show the other slide, which is the complete breakdown of the 1.9 trillion. And in their infinite wisdom, the Democrats have decided that they will not use this nomenclature, but they will use a different nomenclature to try and come up with what is in their 1.9 trillion package, just to make it easy and interesting for people like us. Here we go. This is their, minuscule print. It might be a little hard for you to read it, but I'm just going to go through the broad strokes. Ways and means 923 billion, and that includes the $1,400 per person stimulus checks, external unemployment, expand childcare tax, blah blah blah, and then oversight and reform of 350 billion, education and labor of 290 million, energy and commerce of 122 billion, transportation and infrastructure of 90 billion, financial services of 71 billion, small businesses 50 billion. So anyone who's talking that they are going to get PPP loans, please, there is no amount there. The last one was 290 billion, and that vanished into thin air in like few hours of the window opening. So I'm very skeptical about that. And then there is Veterans Affairs 17 billion, Agriculture 16 billion. I can go on. The numbers are beginning to dwindle now. So now what I'm going to do, with your permission, sir, is I'm going to put up the comparison that we have tried to do, mapping of the new 1.9 trillion, which for lack of a word, I'm calling it Biden 1, because we know there's a Biden 2 just coming down the pipeline. So I have that screen now, which is all of the previous ones captured, plus the new 1.921 trillion. I hope you understand. You have the data in front of you. So take it away, sir. Now you can start, expressing what your observations are about this new 1.9 trillion. By the way, this data only you will find on PGurus. Nobody else has done it. I'm sure Fox, CNBC, everybody else will jump in and start doing this thing, but you heard it here first. Sir, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sree. Here's my first observation. My first observation as we look at this 1.9 trillion, which is the details of the 1.9 trillion before we get to the comparative or the total aggregate numbers rather than comparative. When you take a look at this 1.9 trillion, if you're in public finance, I certainly do not come from public finance. I come from private markets, and I come from the market side of the business. This is a classic expression of how you do not do detailed breakup and accounting. I'll just give you one example. There is a category called, I'll give you two examples. It's a category called energy and commerce. If you take a look at this energy and commerce, you'll find increased public health workforce, fund vaccine distribution confidence and supply chain, allow states to expand Medicaid. So how can this be energy and commerce? This is healthcare in a definition. Now you go to education and labor. When you go to education and labor, provide support for childcare, I understand. Provide funding for K-12 education. Then you have subsidized COBRA coverage for laid off workers. Okay? And extend nutritional assistance, that I can kind of understand. But when you take a look, subsidize COBRA coverage and provide support, increase the federal minimum wage to $15. $15 is not purely for people in the education segment. It should be in the ways and means. Then when you go to ways and means, which also comprises of subsidized COBRA coverage for laid off workers. So if you take a look at the subsidized COBRA coverage, you have $8 billion in ways and means, and you have $10 billion in education and labor. So things of this ilk that you will begin to find. When you take a look at the financial services, it says basically use Defense Production Act to buy and distribute medical supplies. So there is a lot of hodgepodge which has been put together. Now you go to the last items, foreign affairs, 10 billion. Natural resources, 1 billion. Science and technology, 1 billion. So you have this whole swag of numbers which has been added up as almost like a stimulus which is required to almost meet the various constituencies. So this is a good example of running a stimulus, but a bad example of how you orchestrate these numbers. When I say good, a good example is money is needed, as Sree Iyer pointed out, especially in the small business administration, especially in those categories who are people who are going to be long-term unemployed, etc., who need support beyond August and September. In fact, the industry has come out and said the PPP program and the forbearance program should be extended till December 31st. So there should be a higher allocation than mere $50 billion. Mind you, there is a $350 billion of loans that is pending that was not availed that may be released. But that's not PPP, that's not forbearance. That is the augmented loan support, which Steve Mnuchin was not prepared to distribute because when there was no formal legislation passed as to how that should be distributed. So it's almost like a haste. There is unilateral and universal criticism amongst the Republicans, the way this thing has been orchestrated. Now, even markets are beginning to raise skepticism around this allocation of this $1.9 trillion. Now, let's kind of do the comparison, which is the chart, not comparison, aggregation. So if you take the old 3.4 trillion, that's the chart, sir, if you can put up, right?
Just 1 second, sir. I'm bringing it up. Yes, it's up now.
Yeah, if you go back, look into the chart, you got very clear, small business support. Okay, unemployment benefits. Unemployment benefits is basically targeted those, who get that $400 to $600. Recovery rebates. This is namely the money that goes into paying out, what you call people who are that $400, $250, and now $1,400 checks. So that's that. Healthcare spending is very clear. Healthcare spending, $420 billion was allocated towards the entire COVID, vaccines, testing, enhanced distribution, and the vaccination program. State and locally is very clear, which is namely some of the state and local governments are sick, and notably in blue states, and they need money. Whether that should be part of COVID relief is a questionable, but let's assume that is the case. You have $360 billion tax relief. These are credits that are given, like child care credits, the tax credits for corporates, tax credits for small business corporations, etc. Then you have a whole swag of stuff which is called other spending. This is the one which relates to transportation, airline industry support, etc., infrastructure, etc. So those are some of those things that are laid out. So you have a fair amount of clarity as to how this was done in the CARES Act as well as in the R&R, which is Response and Relief, Recovery and Relief Act program. Now, you come to Biden 1 formula. These numbers as Sree Iyer, which is what we have done using the best kind of assessment of reclassifying the numbers that has been hodgepodged into various categories. You'll see small business receives minuscule support, 50 billion. You look at the unemployment benefits because of a large chunk of the program. This is the ways and means of this $1,400 plus this $600 that effectively makes it $668 kind of billion. The big number is because of that $1,400 check. Recovery rebates is 143 billion. Now, healthcare, if you see, it's 122, relatively small, notwithstanding the fact that it's supposed to be the number one priority in this country. The second, which is namely the state and local aid, look at the number, 350 billion. So totally when you add, it is $710 billion is going to be given to state and local aid so that their balance sheets can be cleaned up and they can create the next mess. This was stoutly opposed right throughout the entire stimulus program. The House stood on one leg to make sure that this is part of the program, and this was given in 3 tranches in the first 2 stimulus programs. But look at the third one. This is probably the second highest line item in the Biden 1 formula. Tax relief is 290, which is expected given the size. Then you have the other spending. When you look at the other spending, all of program 1 and 2 was 325. This is just Biden 1 is 298. There's massive money stuck. You can go into the details, the detailed 1-page sheet that is going to be put out and given. That is that you can see it and you can draw your own conclusions. So the next summary of all this is the stimulus is here and it is going to be massive. Over the next few days, we will also give, as we did before, what is the consequence in terms of the 2021 budget. We gave 2019 and 2020. What is its consequence on the long-term debt? Just this 1.9 trillion. There's more to come, just this. And then what is the consequence of it on the interest cost that it does to the balance sheet of the US government? This is the reason why the CBO projected that in 30 years, total US debt will be $100 trillion. It's like a train wreck making its way towards a debt-burdened US economy.
Sir, for a layperson such as myself, this new classification of line items verbiage seems counterproductive to me. If I'm a Democrat, what I would like to do, and I'm a Democratic voter, for example, I'd like to tell my Republican voter friend that, look, whatever you have done, we have done better, and use the same line items and say, here we have done more, here we have done. So that is how I would do it. And yet the Democrats have taken a totally different route and have new things and then essentially added work for us. However, what happens is it prevents proper discussion of where the focus is. For example, one thing we have unearthed is that the PPP program is a total disaster in this case. 50 billion is peanuts. They know that 320 first time and a further 290 did not even scratch the surface. So this is something that is a non-starter, and I can tell you from a practical point of view, PGurus did not even get past the original. They didn't even accept our application for the second round of PPP stimulus. So enough said. So we are now at an end of today's program. Sridharji, we are going to be again, looking at this in some detail, like he said, about what it means to the deficits, how the United States is going to plan on how to control that. I don't know if they are even thinking of that, but it is our important duty here to show that it is fiscally responsible. For instance, you and I, we are at home. We can only spend what we earn. Of course, you can use plastic, but that plastic also you have to pay. At some point, you have to pay. So there is that fiscal responsibility that needs to be there. That's what made this country great. Anyway, I'm going on a rant now. Sridharji, if you have anything to summarize this, then we can call it a wrap, sir.
Only one. I think I'll give a concluding kind of a statement. This is the beginning of a new journey, and more to come.
Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure having you today, and hope viewers, you liked our presentation on stimulus. Please do subscribe to our channel and donate to our cause. Also join our membership, as we are coming out with more focused treatment of top subjects in this COVID pandemic. A lot of important discussions are not taking place. It is our duty and responsibility as people who can give you the real news that we are going to come up with such data. Thank you very much.